Welcome back to Real Life Answers. My name is Ben, and this is Jesus on Culture. Welcome to Jesus on Culture, where we take one of today's top cultural issues and discuss it in a series. This series involves two pastors, Dan Bannister, pastor of Grace Alive Church in Ontario, California, and Bob Bannister, pastor of First Baptist Church Springfield, Louisiana. We'll be discussing issues such as, should Christians be involved in social justice? Is racism a sin? What is white privilege? Does it actually exist? God bless you. Have a great day. And here is Jesus on Culture.
How did you guys get involved with this topic? And I think she's just talking about racism and caring about social justice. I'll let Dan answer the question first, and then I can give my answer as well. How did you get involved? What caused a love for you in this this particular direction?
So for me, it was simply having conversations with people of color who were dealing with discrimination, who started to explain the differences, like you talked about the experience of America. That
my wife's bad handwriting. Sorry, that was from Maurice, not a girl named Maria. It's Maurice. Sorry, brother. Bad handwriting. I'm gonna get my wife for that later. The way that came about for me was conversations that I was having with people of different ethnicities that were dealing with issues. For me, honestly, it started as I was looking at issues within the Hispanic culture. I moved to Mexico and started. Did some mission work down there, and as I returned, started looking at. I was pastoring a Spanish-speaking church, and I started looking at a lot of the issues. Again, this whole concept of diversifying your social network. Started looking at a lot of the issues that my congregation was facing, and I started having to realize, okay, their experience of our system is very different than the experience that I have as a white man. And so, as I started examining that, then I started examining the experience of people of all kinds of different ethnic groups, and understanding the ways that that racial discrimination and white privilege are realities within the U.S. So, and some people here may take offense at the term white privilege. I want to be very careful to explain what that means. It doesn't mean that every white person is taken advantage of on purpose. It's not a.
It's a reality. It's just correct. A reality of what you experience. Think about it.
Kind of thing.
So, and it's built into the system that we live in.
It's the same thing as me having the privilege of. This is a smaller scale. This is a good way to look at it. The same way of me having skin that doesn't burn easy in the sun. I have the privilege of not burning easy, which irritates my wife. So I have that privilege. Well, it's something that's just naturally there. It's not something that I'm doing on purpose to hurt my black brothers and sisters, if that makes sense.
White privilege is something that I have as an American white man. And what that means, and here's some ways that the system that just little things that we don't even think about. And these get blown up into much bigger issues. So I'm going to mention a couple of innocuous things that we probably wouldn't even think about. So when you think about, and this was a black friend of mine who is a black woman who she was explaining white privilege. And she said, you think about it, like you go to a hotel and you can use the shampoo that's left in the hotel. As a person of color, I can't. So I have to bring my own shampoo from home because I know that even though the hotel provides these things, the system is built for white people. It's built for people who don't have hair like mine. That is one example of white privilege. I don't have to bring my own to a hotel. Another one is when you think about things like we used to have crayons that were skin color. Well, what color was the skin color? It was white, very similar to my skin color. And these are just some examples of things that get blown up at bigger, and people would say, well, aren't these mostly harmless? Well, probably mostly in these little things that I'm mentioning, but these get blown up. Think about it. If these little bitty things end up being issues,
then you start having these same types of problems. And we see this in when we see things like hiring patterns. So it's far more likely, and this is just a reality, people with white sounding names like John are more likely to get a call back for a second interview than people with a name like Jamal. This is a statistical reality that reflects white privilege. Now, it's a horrible reality because it actually oppresses and changes the experience of America for people of color. So when we see people with different names, they
saying that because I really love how you said that, because it's not, some of us have done it, like I said, under the radar. It's more of a, well, I'm not familiar with that name, so I don't want to call that phone number kind of thing. It's hard for me to pronounce it, and I don't want to sound like a moron. Well, even though we're doing it for a different reason, it still presents the same problem. Whereas there are other people who do it because, well, they're probably that race, and I don't want to talk to them. There's two different segments, but they're both perpetuating the same action by different motives. And
one
so
is discrimination, one is partiality.
Of that, yeah. And how I got into this topic was I kind of mentioned it earlier with a personal testimony, but I had two very, I don't know what the word is perfectly, but they're very respectable guys. The first story that hit me was on Facebook. This guy, I was actually his substitute teacher at his school, and he wrote a story, and I was obviously irritated by all of the cries of racism and was getting annoyed by that. And I saw the way he started his story out. Now, I don't know if he did it on purpose, but the way he wrote the first two lines caught your attention if you were somebody from my side of the aisle. Well, I started reading it looking for proof that I was right. Well, that's not what I got at all. As I read his story, it broke me in my spirit. And I began to realize that his experience with police officers should not have happened. And that this guy, who is one of the most soft-spoken, kind gentlemen I've ever met, was being treated this way. It only had to do with the color of his skin. And I was like, that is sad. And then I started asking difficult questions of a really close friend of mine, and he told me similar stories. Now, he looked at me one day, he asked me one day over the phone, he says, did you ever notice the difference in how people looked at us when we were walking together? I said, honestly, no. I said, I guess it was the way I was raised. I just didn't see the problem because to me, there was no problem. I was blind to it. I said, and now I see it. I said, but back then I didn't care. You were one of my closest friends, and that was the last thing in the world on my mind was what were people thinking? I was just enjoying hanging out with you. And so for me, this issue of racism came not because of George Floyd. It's important to bring notation to him and what happened there because it's unjust. But the main thing that hit me were personal stories from friends of mine. And so that's what brought me into the topic.
So what did you think? Is there anything you'd like to add to what was said today? If so, please let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like what you saw today, please hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss an episode. Finally, please join us every Monday at 4 p.m. for new issues regarding our culture.